there's a larger conversation that the public in Arizona needs to have, and hopefully Demand to Learn can help mediate that conversation.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Vitalyst Spark podcast. I'm your host, John Ford, and we're crossing the halfway mark for our mini-series of minisodes featuring recently awarded 2018 innovation grants. If you missed our earlier episodes in the series, check back in the episode feed for our interviews with Tucson's Flowers and Bullets and the White Mountain Apache Tribe. Throughout this mini-series, our purpose is to go beyond that single paragraph in the press release and really get a feel for the great work that's underway in our communities. And it'll all happen in about the space of your daily commute. So let's get to it. Miniseries Episode 3 takes place at the intersection of education and health. We have a fabulous person in the room. Her name is Anabel Maldonado. She is campaign manager at ACLU of Arizona. Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you.
We're here to talk about the Demand to Learn program, and Vitalyst was fortunate enough to be able to provide funding along in a partnership with the Arizona Community Foundation. We're very excited about it. And please tell us a little bit about that grant and what you're working on.
Yeah, so this grant is going to 3 of our core partner organizations: Rising Youth Theater, the Black Mothers Forum, and Morningstar Native Youth Council. All very diverse organizations that we're very fortunate to work with. And then we're also working with 8 school systems, 4 districts, and 4 charters, where we review their data quarterly. We create action plans with them to make sure that they are on track to reducing their out-of-school suspensions by 50% in the next 2 years. That's a big goal that we've set for ourselves, but we have some great partners to help us, in addition to our 3 core partners that we are funding through this Vitalyst Innovation Grant. We're very excited, very, very excited.
You know who's more excited than you? We are. This is a fantastic program. So where we're starting, Latino students in charter high schools are 6 times more likely than their white peers to receive out-of-school suspensions. African-American students in charter high schools are 8 times more likely than their white peers to receive out-of-school suspensions. Students with disabilities, twice as likely. Native American students, 10 times more likely. This is the data you started with. How does the action plan develop from there?
So it really depends on the school system, right? I think it's difficult to implement practices that has like the same mold for each school. So we treat every school differently. We approach every school differently. But on the advocacy front, I think these numbers are really shocking. And, I will say that some of those numbers go higher up, in particular for Native populations. We've seen that the closer that a school district is to a tribal community, the higher that rate goes up. So it could be even 20 times more likely in one particular school. Those are just the Maricopa County averages.
As if those numbers weren't shocking enough.
Yes, so it's definitely an issue, and I think more people need to, hear these rattling statistics and really ground ourselves, right? That this is not just what we know anecdotally as organizers on the ground, but this is a problem overall, not just in Maricopa County and the state of Arizona, but across the nation. There's a lot of great work being done all over the U.S.
At its core, how would you describe Demand to Learn in, say, one sentence?
So I always say our marquee goal, what we say is the Demand to Learn campaign's objective is to eliminate student push-out in Maricopa County. And we do that through organizing of families, through our partnerships with schools and our partnerships with grassroots organizations to help build capacity in the community.
And so this particular grant really focuses in on 3 partners, right? Mm-hmm. Black Mothers Forum, Morningstar Leaders, and Rising Youth Theater. Talk about how you formed those partnerships and why they're important to achieving that goal.
Those partnerships really came naturally as I was on the ground and I encountered these groups.
They're amazing organizations.
They're
by the way.
amazing organizations. They've been doing this work. And, the great thing about this partnership is that we were going to do it with or without funding. So now it just gives us that much more resources to tap into. But I can talk about specifically each. We've been going through a campaign planning process with each of those 3 orgs to map out what the next 2 years are going to look like. And we have some really exciting things coming.
Tell us about some of those things.
Yes. So
Rising Youth Theater, by the way, has been a guest on this podcast before.
I know. I tried to get them to come back. They had a conflicting schedule, so no one could show up. But
they didn't want to talk to me.
Well,
Talk about
Rising Youth Theater, they've just, been an amazing partner. I think one of the unique things about the Demand to Learn campaign is that we've really been able to merge this organizing and the arts. So all of our events are very unique and very fun. I always get feedback that they're, just fun and aesthetically pleasing to go to. I think both Rising Youth and Demand to Learn as a core value, we have centering the voices of youth. I think many times when we talk about student push out, it's a bunch of adults in the room making decisions for youth.
Right.
And so we have an amazing core group of youth that we've been developing together to talk about this issue of student push out. And over the next 2 years, these youth are going to become trained restorative justice practitioners working in 3 targeted areas. And they're going to train their teachers how to approach a situation in a restorative way.
Where were you when I was in high school? How amazing is that?
Yes, well, we take ideas from the amazing work that's happening all over the country. We went in January, we toured a school in Denver, North High School, which is a model school in the nation that has implemented restorative justice over 10 years. And the youth were really impressed by it. And that's the conversation that came out of that trip. So we're very excited to kind of flip the power dynamic and have the youth training their teachers.
So we're centering youth. We got
Always.
Youth training teachers. We've also got Black Mothers Forum.
Yes.
So is that sort of, not to assign one to the other because I'm sure it's all integrative, but Rising Youth Theater, centering youth, Black Mothers Forum contributing in terms of parents?
Yes, they have an amazing advocacy program with their mothers. They've been doing a lot of one-on-ones when there's a family in need that needs assistance to talk to an administration if their kid is going to be pushed out. They've just been doing amazing work overall. And the idea is to overlap all of this work so that we can really see the benefits of the Demand to Learn vision and goals. So the Black Mothers Forum is going to be working at Betty Fairfax High School, which is a Phoenix Union high school in South Phoenix. They have we've been in Phoenix Union High School District is one of our partners as well, so we have gotten space for the Black Mothers Forum to be there on campus.
Wow.
As a resource for parents when there is an issue. They've also helped us identify some youth that we're going to be working with at that school. Black Mothers Forum and Rising Youth Theater together with the support of Demand to Learn. And their mothers are also going to go through a restorative justice training so they can focus on how, I think there's a question in the school, right? When the district comes in and says, we're going to do restorative justice, and there's no buy-in from the teachers and community. So we're really going to focus on how do we get the community to support these efforts, not just teachers, but the surrounding community. Our goals is to have 2 Know Your Rights trainings a month, to host public meetings in November and December, to host some sort of community feedback, to make sure that we're on the right track and that we're actually implementing what the community needs.
And let's not forget Morningstar Youth Leaders.
They're out in Mesa. I think that this partnership in particular is really interesting because I think when we talk about organizing, many of our Native communities aren't really part of that conversation. And I think it's unfortunate. So we've really been developing that strong relationship with Morningstar. They have an amazing group of youth that are very engaged. And with them, we're really going to start exploring the basics of organizing. How do you advocate for yourself? Also grounded in knowing their rights, but also, since they're in Mesa, exploring what are the issues in Mesa? What is happening on the ground? Why is there so much mobility between district schools or schools that are neighboring tribal communities and then going back to tribal communities? I think there's an interesting dynamic there that we don't know what's going to come out of that exploratory phase of this partnership with Morningstar. And we know that Native youth are some of the most vulnerable youth. So we are excited to kind of build that advocacy muscle in the youth so that they can instill it in their parents and in their communities.
Have you found that mobility is, at least in part, driven by almost an internal conflict between tribal tradition, tribal legacy, self-determination, and sort of the need to also plant one foot in the Western world and the issues that are, the many issues that are involved in that? Is that coming through at this point?
You know what? I don't want to speak on what their experience is like. I'm not sure. Anecdotally, what I know working with these youth is that, I think there's one story in particular comes to mind of one of the youth that we work with. She attended a Mesa public school. She is diabetic and had to, severely, had to go to the hospital and have all these treatments, and because of that, Mesa Public Schools dropped her, and so she would go back and forth, and she, now she's a second-year senior, and I think we can't forget these intersections, not just between education and student push-out, but like health-related. I think that's a really interesting angle, how I'm not sure what ranking, but I think the tribal communities near Mesa have one of the highest rates in diabetes, and that's
Absolutely.
No coincidence. Mm-hmm. No coincidence.
In terms of the work itself, how do you see it playing out between grassroots self-advocacy, looking at higher level policy engagement and advocacy, and really just school to school, principal to principal negotiation?
Yes, I think that's why, I think these three core partnerships are really important. For me, it's always the first thing on my mind. How do I build capacity in these three groups? So if for whatever reason demand to learn does not exist tomorrow, that the work can still continue and live on with them. And that's what's most important for me. I think they're really my eyes and ears on the ground. And when it comes to more statewide policy, we've been doing a lot of work at the state charter board as well, and have had some significant wins that demand to learn, and the ACLU of Arizona can really take on those statewide policies, and our core partners can take on the local one-on-one advocacy.
Do those two ever run into each other? Do you find yourself needing to go beyond grassroots in order to get to policy, in order to answer to what the grassroots groups are identifying and asking for?
Definitely. It's all, we have two meetings a month with our core partners and our core leaders. We're very tight-knit D2L family, we call it. And so all of our decisions, whether it's our three goals for the next 2 years as Demand to Learn, just Demand to Learn, all of that has gone through a very collaborative process with youth, with teachers, with moms, and our core partners, and then feedback from our school partnerships as well. Like, is this something that we want as a Demand to Learn team? And then vice versa. I think there's a really neat balance there between higher level policy and this one-on-one advocacy. I think, we always talk about in Demand to Learn that we are for system systems change, right? But we cannot deny when a family comes to us and they need help immediately, we also need to be able to advocate for them in that instance.
Without question, and that's part of what empowers these groups to be even more effective, is when they see firsthand that solutions can be achieved.
Yes. So we developed our policy platform last October. We held a big policy summit where it was a really intensive process. 2 months prior to that, we started conversations with a group of mothers, a group of youth, and a group of teachers, really asking them the questions: what is the problem in your eyes as Black mothers, as Native mothers, as teachers, as youth? What is the problem? What are some solutions you see? What are places doing it? How are places actually doing this well?
How far apart were those perceptions when you started?
Very far apart.
Okay.
But that was the neat part of the process, I think, is that to create that common language between communities of color, communities that are directly impacted, and they're all being impacted in the same way. They've just had never had the opportunity to sit in a room together. And I think that's what makes the Demand to Learn campaign so powerful.
And you fixed that whole thing in one day, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, just boom, just like that.
In 2 years, we'll have it solved.
Okay, So we have the core partners. We have administrations in different schools. We have teachers, teacher groups in each of those schools probably. For the overall school community, to what level is there recognition about what's going on and support for it?
I think at least our 8 core partners are, they had to willingly sign this informal MOU with us. So they realize the importance of what the Demand to Learn campaign is trying to do and talking about. I think it really takes time to develop that common language between administrators and teachers. I think when we talk about the issue of student push out, how we say it is that that always starts between a conflict between a teacher and a student, and that's when the student is pushed out of the classroom, right? Mm-hmm. But I think with that being said, the teachers are having to do a lot more with a lot less resources, and so we also as a campaign need to ask them, what do they need? I think teachers have come up with some really interesting solutions in other parts of the country. And, we've seen that some of these restorative justice models do work. It just takes time.
Are there supports coming from places like, I don't know, Arizona School Board Association, the PTOs in the particular schools? Are you seeing questions? Are you seeing support? Are you seeing resistance?
I think overall we've seen a lot of support. I think what's interesting about the Demand to Learn campaign, I've really tried to make this about the moms and the youth and those that are directly impacted. And we've been trying to identify ways to collaborate with some of these, other partners without taking that voice away from mothers and youth. So I've been very intentional about that, to not have this just become a policy organization campaign. I really want this to be grounded in the communities that we serve. And so I think there's many ways to partner with them. And I think, Know Your Rights forums is a perfect way. Everyone wants us to go and do Know Your Rights forums. So shout out if anyone wants us to go. We do them in English and in Spanish, and we have some amazing mothers that are trained in that.
And how would somebody go to ACLU of Arizona's website? Where would they go?
Yes, you can either go to the ACLU of AZ website or the Demand to Learn website, demandtolearnaz.org.
And we'll put those links in the show notes. Now, just a quick lightning round. If you had one piece of advice to give to any community that felt that Demand to Learn should be working in their school district, what would you say?
I would say reach out to us. I think our goal is to become a training hub so that people in different communities, even outside of Maricopa County, can come and get the resources that they need from us and guidance that they need from us to then go and implement it in their own school.
Great. If you were to look out 2 years from now, what would the landscape look like and what would the numbers say?
I would say that all of our partner school systems have reduced their out-of-school suspensions by 50%. Restorative justice program at Betty Fairfax is thriving and is going to be implemented in other schools, and Phoenix Union really becomes the model for our communities. I would say that there's publicly available and easy to digest data on how students are being pushed out across the state.
And hopefully we have a situation where diverse communities understand each other better and work better at the same goal, which is to help kids learn and succeed in life.
Yes. You know, I think there's a lot of conversations around education, especially this year with, the Red for Ed, and, I think definitely that's very important, but I think there's a larger conversation that the public in Arizona needs to have, and hopefully Demand to Learn can help mediate that conversation.
Thank you so much, Annabelle, for taking the time to talk with us at the Vitalyst Spark. More importantly, thank you for your terrific work. That's it for this minisode miniseries episode 3. Stay tuned. Episode 4, featuring the Sonoran Prevention Work's key insights beyond the headlines of the opioid crisis, is headed your way next. To make sure you get it, reach into your podcast app right now and subscribe to the Vitalyst Spark. As always, remember this: with great responsibility comes great power. We'll see you back on the road to well-being soon.